Hey, Alec Miller here, founder of Royals and Rogues, and today we talked to Matthew Encina. I was really excited to have him on because I had just talked to Chris Do, and he had mentioned that Matthew had recently departed from the future and has started his own YouTube channel. I wanted to ask Matthew what would motivate him to go out on his own when he's already part of such a successful venture, and what were some of the challenges he faced, as well as how did he know when it was the right time to leave. If you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, there's plenty of tips and tricks inside this video as well as discussions around how the monetization works and how you find sponsors, and how to make a channel that is successful and how to get to know your audience better. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, yeah. So I've been trying to get more motivated here to act and do things, and I decided I really enjoy just long form conversations with people, and I was like, you know what, let's just do the podcast. So Chris was nice enough to say that if I started it, he'd be on it. And he was, which was wonderful. It was really great. I really enjoyed talking with him and trying to ask some questions I figured he wasn't answering all the time. So it was less, business and more life and kind of big questions. And so, and then he mentioned you in the podcast and was talking about how you've obviously left the future and blind, and he was like, people were messaging me like, oh, is there tea? Is there drama? Like, what's going on or whatever? And I was like, I know both of you, right? So I knew there probably wasn't anything like that, but it was funny that people almost were hoping for it. And I was like, no, it's chill.
Somebody wants the juicy story.
yeah. But he was talking about how he was happy that you moved on and kind of surprised it took you as long as it did. And I was kind of thinking, how kind of rare that is, right? I think it'd be pretty uncommon for people to kind of get what would be considered a dream job for a lot of people, working for the future and for, a YouTube channel that has 1 million subscribers, and you kind of have freedom to carte blanche to do whatever you want. And it's like, why would you leave that? Like, why would you ever give that up? So, so like, that's kind of, what I wanted to ask about mostly today. And then we'll see where that takes us. It's just kind of conversational.
Right. So after speaking with Chris, and he mentioned me, and you're wondering now, why the heck would I leave this dream job? And it was a dream job, and it has been a dream job working with Chris for so long. I originally started as his student back in 2006. So I've been with him for a long time. He's been my mentor for a long time, and he still is my mentor, even though I don't work there. So he's helped me for pretty much almost half of my life, or a third of my life at least. And he's definitely been a big influence on me in how I think and how I work and just how I operate. So leaving that job was not something that was an easy decision at all. It was something that I had considered maybe even a few years ago and just started creeping up. And then slowly but surely, everything aligned in my mind in terms of opportunity outside of that job, me feeling confident to be able to do something on my own, because for a long time I didn't feel confident that I could do it on my own, and then just seeing the possibilities of what else could be there, because so much of where I was in the past was just building the things with Chris, building the businesses with Chris, and it was very fun, it was very exciting, and it was nice to have somebody so confident and so daring in the charge of all of that, and then me being able to kind of draft behind that and witness all of those things. I think we're all great examples that fed my ultimate decision to leave.
So you said that there's a number of things, and it'd be fun to kind of break down into them a little bit, because you said there's the potential that you saw. What was that potential? 1 million subscribers seems like the ceiling for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, let's just talk about, I think from an outsider's perspective, you could see, hey, there's Matthew. He has a great role at the future, which has 1 million subscribers. They're gaining so much traction over these past few years. You have all this freedom and ability to do whatever you want. And the answer is, I can, with the asterisks of within the confines of the company. So there's still a very clear purpose and mission that the future is after. A lot of it is being led by Chris. And while I still believe in that mission and what he's trying to do with that company, ultimately, I'm still building his vision. I'm still building his company. I'm still building his thing. And so much of what he's shared and taught all of us over the years is like, dude, you have all this creative energy and potential. Why not spend that on yourself? So it took my hard head many, many years to finally hear that and be like, oh, maybe he's talking to me too.
Yeah.
So it led me down that road, and it was a lot of little things that were trickling down to this decision. And how I made my decision was based off of a few key factors. One was creative freedom, like what kind of projects can I work on, and how creatively fulfilling is that going to be? Two, ultimately, what kind of joy is this job, whatever job I'm going to take or do, is going to give me back? Three, like flexibility of time. Like how flexible am I to just step out during the day and do whatever I want versus doing the work that I have to do? And then I think the last thing was revenue. Like how much can a potential opportunity generate revenue for me? So these were all factors that I actually was thinking about at the beginning of 2020. I had enrolled into the Alt MBA by Seth Godin, which Chris enrolled me in. He's like, take this. I think it's going to be good for you. And of course, going through that, it was so introspective and outrospective. It taught you how to be a critical thinker, how to be more empathetic. But one of the assignments in there was how to make better decisions. So at the time, there was an opportunity for me to go off somewhere else to be acquired for a large amount of money, but that would have taken me away from the future, and that was early in 2020. So it coincidentally lined up with this assignment for better decision making. So it said, okay, well, if you need to make a decision, what criteria would you use to make that decision? And those were the things that I just mentioned, creativity, freedom, time, and income, revenue. So I was like, okay, stay with the future or go this route, this new route. And then, of course, that prompt being a Seth Godin program, it's like, well, are those the only decisions that you have to make? What are all the decisions you're not considering? I was like, made me scratch my head. It's like, well, let's just add a few more for fun. What if I go work for a completely different company, go out somewhere else and go find a job? And then what if I just go out completely on my own? So there were these 4 options that I charted out, and then I rated each of these opportunities based off of those 4 criterias, and I rated each category 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. So I calculated each one to my best ability to judge those. And guess what came out number 1? Going on my own. It scored the highest for happiness, time, creativity, and potential income. And then right after that, drafting in second place was staying at the future, maybe by like 2 points behind. And then everything else was much further behind. And I realized those other 2 options were not for me. I don't want to work at other places. So it's either the future or going on my own. Like those were the top 2. And realistically at the time, it's like, well, I would have to make up so much extra income to supplement what I'm earning at the future for it to make sense for me to be happily on my own. And because that wasn't a reality at the time, I was like, okay, well, someday. And it kind of went into the back of my head, and it was just a seed that was planted there early 2020. 2020 went on. We went through the pandemic. Our whole company, the whole world got flipped upside down.
Right.
Everything changed. At the same time, I'm still passively growing my personal YouTube channel, which has just been a hobby, has just been for fun. Luckily, I've been finding success, but it's been earning revenue. It's been earning money through different opportunities, through sponsorships and affiliate revenue, through AdSense revenue. And we came to the end of 2020. Now I'm at this point where I'm doing the books for 2020, looking at my numbers, and a couple things happened. One, my YouTube channel, I think, reached 200,000 subscribers. It's like, what the heck? That's crazy. That's insane. 2, looking at my income, all of my side hustle stuff, which includes my YouTube and stuff, that made as much revenue as my salary at the future. So I was like, huh. And then 3, since we spent the whole year working remotely at the future, I kind of lost my mentor a little bit. Like the beautiful thing about working at that place is being physically in the location with Chris and Ben and everybody else, because we could pass by each other in the hallways, we can grab lunch, we can share ideas almost immediately. Where working remotely, one of the downsides of it is you don't really have those passing moments. You don't have that intimacy, that closeness with other people, and you have to schedule something on the books, right? It's like, oh, well, if I want to have a random conversation with Chris, I have to schedule something on the books. You know, it's kind of, it got so weird. So, and so much of our effort at the future was to scale Chris. Like the whole reason why Jesse challenged him initially was like, dude, you're giving away all of your amazing teaching abilities to 15 students at a time at a private art school that's very limited in supply. Wouldn't you rather do more? And so the goal has always been to scale Chris. So selfishly, I want him as a mentor, but at the same time, like we've been pushing him out there for everybody else to access and have. So all of these factors have added up, and then we come to the end of 2020. It's like, wow, okay, I don't really have much of a mentor here. I've pretty much worn every hat I could possibly wear at the future. And, you know, I feel like I've hit a certain growth ceiling. And then now there's all these potential opportunities to go off on my own to earn a bunch of income pursuing my own thing. All of that was done in my passive time, my extra time. What happens if I focus on that? What happens to my life? What happens to my income? You know, so those were big questions that were happening in my mind. And it just was like, you know what? It's time to make the decision. This makes total logical sense. I even shared all of this with Chris. And he's like, yep. And, you know, he's taking notes for everything. Yeah. Of course. He's like, yeah, this makes perfect logical sense. Like if I were you, I would do the same exact thing. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got to the decision of, you know, it's time for me to move on finally.
Yeah, no, I think that all sums it up really well and makes a lot of sense. You know, it's not something that you did lightly on a whim. You know, you kind of broke down how you know how to do that. Did you have a set plan when you left, or did you just happen to be like, you know what, I'm gonna make some snake plant videos and people are gonna fall in love with it and that's where I'm going? Like, what was the kind of the plan? Did you like set yourself up a little bit, or did you just jump?
I had a small plan. The small plan when leaving was, first of all, I want to give myself so much room to just breathe. Mm-hmm. To get away from the emails, get away from the notifications, get away from just the everyday of having to be responsible for other people and making this big machine that was the future run and make sure my part is done. Like I needed a few weeks away from that to just turn off that part of my brain. And then just get into this kind of like quiet space of my isolation, my own brain and my space to figure out what it is that I want. Because I might want something, but I didn't feel like I had clarity at the end of that. I needed space. So now I have all this space, which is fantastic. My only plan was to continue to make videos on my channel, at least 1 or 2 a month. It's like the easiest little thing. Like, let me just make a small amount of commitments here. And the thing that's really been driving that, because I told myself, you know, I'm going to do this through Q1 of 2021 and then see where I'm at. But I'm booked through Q2 for obligations with new videos and new sponsors, just because they keep coming. They just keep landing in my email box. So like all these opportunities are happening, and that's what's driving it. It's like, oh, I didn't know I had more content in me. Well, I'll just keep going. I'll keep going and if people keep asking me, because if somebody's going to offer me something like a pretty decent size sponsorship, it gives me motivation. It's like, oh yeah, what else do I have in the tank? What else do I want to talk about? What else is up here? And then those become things for me to capture and line up. And the reason why I'm motivated by those things is, if you understand a little bit of my nature, I'm competitive. I was a creative director in the past, and I would pitch for jobs all the time. So I love big game hunting, very much like Chris. So I like these opportunities where there's something there to capture if I could just line stuff up right and then convince the other person that we're a good match and a good fit for each other. So going off on my own and doing YouTube and knowing that there are potential sponsorship opportunities out there, it's kind of like pitching on advertising work. It's kind of like pitching on work where if I get this, then I get to get this reward at the end, which is a big chunk of money. It's a much smaller scale than an advertising project, but it's still very similar in the same sense. There's a sponsor who has a message that wants to market with my aligned audience. And, I just have to find a way to integrate it now with the content that I make. So because of that, I think I'm able to scratch that itch that I used to have all the time doing commercial work and still express a lot of personal interest and creativity of things that I'm currently thinking about, pondering, or doing in my everyday life anyway. So there's this beautiful overlap of a lot of things that are happening right now in my life. And I'm just going to keep going down that road until I get bored, until it's like, okay, this is stale, or the opportunities dry up, or, I'm no longer favorable in the YouTube algorithm, and I'm okay. I'm okay with all of those things. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I'm just going to keep running with this and see where it takes me.
Yeah, hey, congratulations. That's really exciting. I really get excited when I hear of someone I know that's making it, especially when it's like doing something new and different, and just hearing that people are reaching out and recognizing that talent and wanting to see, partner with you in different ways. I think that's super awesome. And so just congrats. And I just want to it's cool too when you take a risk and it pays off, right? It's like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to quit, and I'm going to, I made a similar decision last year, when I was working full time and running my company. And then I lost that full-time position due to everything going on. And then I made the decision to I'm not going to go look for anything else. I'm just going to 100% put all my energy behind my company. And that paid off really well. And so it's exciting seeing other people. And then my wife did the same thing shortly after. And then, I think I'm trying to, the meta of this whole podcast is getting creative people to think creatively when it comes to their careers. Typically, when you talk to a creative, that I was doing all these what do you call them again? Portfolio reviews, and everyone just wanted to go work for, Weta or ILM or something. And it's like, those are cool companies, and it's great if you can get that opportunity. But there's so many more options out there right now that are so, way more interesting, and you can have so much more control of your life, but nobody wants to take that risk. So every time you have somebody that, I see somebody that's doing that, and I like to point to them and go hey, this does work. It can work, and it's not impossible. And I don't even know if it's all that rare anymore. I think there was a time where you could argue that it's not everyone can make it on their own. Not everyone can be their own company or whatever. But I really believe in this company of one idea, which is kind of what you're talking about. I'm a mini, advertising company / production company / gardener, you know what I mean? And that's what I do now. And so that's really cool, and that's really exciting. So when somebody reaches out to you and they're asking about, they're inquiring about doing a sponsored deal, let's say, I'm sure it's varied, but typically do they have an idea for a video, or do they go, hey, do you have a video that's coming up that matches this? Or what would you do with this product if we sent it to you? What does that usually look like?
Yeah, so in the YouTube and even just in the content space in general, usually, let's just stick to YouTube. There's a thing called ad integrations, where essentially on the most disconnected level, it's not really integrated. You would see this on Linus Tech Tips, for instance. Mm-hmm. Within the first minute, he will do a flip, and then he will read off essentially a sponsor message. They'll send him a product, he'll show a few B-roll shots of it, and then tell you the offer. Right. It's for NordVPN or whatever the new VPN thing is. It's and then it's done, and then that's it. And usually channels will just have placements available like that, and it's okay, right, for this placement it costs this much. That's one way of doing it.
Right. That's kind of it's close to traditional media or media buying, right? So it's when you would go, hey, there's this slot, we can get the 9 o'clock. It's every time it's there. So at the beginning of every Linus Tech Tips episode, there's a small spot at the beginning and a small spot at the end, and they're for the same, client. And the one at the beginning is about 5 seconds long, and the one at the end is 20 seconds long. And you get a total of 25, or maybe it's 10 seconds and 20 seconds. So a total of 30 seconds advertising it at the heads and tails of each video.
And then there's the more integrated types of videos, or sometimes they call them dedicated videos, where mm-hmm. that product is weaved in pretty much into the entire piece of content. For me, most people that reach out, usually they just have a product and an offer that they just look at essentially the numbers of the channel and more or less the niche of what you're
Right.
doing. And then they're just hoping to get in. It's like, hey, can we put something on your channel?
Right.
And then usually it's up to me to decide how that might be integrated. A few of them come in with ideas, but 90% of them, they just like, I have a product. Can we sponsor one of your pieces of content somehow?
And then, so would you be negotiating from then on? Is it like, well, actually, I have this cool idea. Like, let's say Home Depot came to you, right? And they said, we'd like to sponsor a video, especially, we have this paint section that we'd like to call out. And then you would go back to them and say, oh, okay, cool. Well, I need to repaint a room, and how about if I do one where I use only your paints and we do a mural or something on one of the walls, and I think it would be worth this much to you or something, or they come back. Like, how does that process work after you've initially pitched an idea?
Right. So usually before we even get to that part about pitching the ideas, usually budget is discussed. So I
Okay.
have minimums that I will share with them, and that varies based off of how aligned I am with the brand.
Mhm.
If it's something that I already use, love, and know, I have a certain number for them. It's like, well, I'm willing to play a little bit more ball and just give them a lower minimum level of engagement. Where if it's a brand that's like, I never really heard of them, and I want to make them work for it a little bit more, then I will give them a higher number just to see how interested they really are.
Mhm.
So I have a range that I would toss out. And if they say, okay, like if they don't sneeze at that number, like if they're not afraid of that budget, then I know, okay, let's hop on a call. Let's talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then they will, share more details about the creative brief. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's our campaign. And then I will pitch an idea back, just like you said, probably a few sentences like, here's an idea for a video that I have, and here's how I can integrate your product. As
Mhm.
simple as that. And usually they'll be like, okay, sounds good. And then we'll get an agreement going. I'll do some red lines. We'll go back and forth for terms. And then we sign, and then we get going.
Awesome. So it's kind of budget driven then. So the budget comes first, and then once you have that locked in, you can kind of figure out, okay, within this budget, here's what I think we could create, which makes a lot of sense.
Right. That's for most people that are inquiring with me. When I'm doing outreach, when there's certain brands that I do want to work with, I have to do a little bit more of a cold pitch.
Hmm.
And usually I will reach out either through DM on Instagram is the first place I'll go to. The second place is I will just go to their website and look if they have any contact emails there. I try to avoid the general contact, and sometimes they have some where, oh, it's like if you want to work with us, or for, I forget what the term is, but there's certain categories, and I just look at the different areas of their company, like who would be the most the right department to contact, and then I will send them a cold email, something along the lines of, "Hey, admirer of your brand, love the content you did with this creator or this creator." So because I already know they're sponsoring people, and I was always curious um, if you'd be interested in collaborating with other creators in this space. And then I would give some kind of pitch about me. It's like, I make videos, they get millions of views. I've shipped over $1 million in affiliates, and so I just try to hit all the biggest numbers that I could possibly do. And I've worked with these 3 brands, like things that I know that are relevant, that are curated for that person I'm talking to. And I'd love to speak more. So I just try to give them the highlights to see if I could get them to bite, right? That's the bait. And most of the time we end up setting up a call. And then when that happens, that's where I'm not necessarily pushing my budget first. I want to gauge interest and develop a good relationship, because I already have an affinity towards the brand, and I do want to work with them somehow. And even if it's as simple as a product trade that I might feature on an Instagram story, like that's really easy to do. Or it might be something more in depth where they're trying to promote something new and they don't know how. And then I could just brainstorm with them, and then we could figure out a way to work with each other. So there are, those are the brands where it's like, I will do the outreach and I have to do more cold calling, cold pitching, and then just really warm them up to an idea of collaborating.
That also makes a lot of sense. I think it's an interesting world right now, because it's like you can turn your views and your attention that you get into money, right? And it's one of those things that leans really heavily towards artists, because artists for the longest time, you know, would get like a lot of attention, they get a lot of visuals, right? But the idea of making money was really hard. And now, you know, you can pretty much monetize anything if you can get viewers on it. And one of the things that's always interesting to me is, you know, choosing what you want to monetize. Like choosing like what you want to do is hard. And it's something that I have a really hard time with this channel. It's like, well, I really like long form discussions. I really like this thing. I really like that thing. And it's hard for me to choose one thing to focus on. You know, how did you kind of fall into your brand, as it were, right? You're kind of, it's like a, let me think, I'm going to try to describe it and we'll see if I'm close. So I would say it's something like a home, a chill, like home and self-improvement channel. That's like with like a filmmaking creative bent to it. I don't know. It's like, it's hard for me to even describe exactly what it is, but I was kind of shocked as like, you know, I've seen your work in the past and you've done work with Xbox and you've done work with, you know, the Coldplay and big, you know, brands and stuff. And they're flashy and there's 3D and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, let's see what Matthew's going to make. And then it's like, you know, I'm going to water my plant and I'm going to set up my desk and I'm like, oh, this is cool, but this is completely different than what he's been doing in the past. So how'd you fall on that as kind of your brand? And am I close? I don't know if you have a better way of describing it.
That's pretty good. And I'm still trying to figure that out. You know, I see myself as a burnt out creative who's trying to design a better life for himself. So that's where I'm at right now. And what that means is like, that's the processes. That's how I live my everyday life. That's my environment. That's a lot of different things. So that's the way I'm kind of looking at it right now. But how I ended up in this space was, I mean, I've been making commercials and then content at the future. So I'm not new to this stuff. Like I've been exploring and experimenting in that forever in many different shapes and form, just never on my own. And then it was sometime at the end of 2018 where I had already been making several videos on the Future channel. And it's like, you know what? I feel really good about this. Like they're getting great traction. I feel really good about what I'm making and what I have to say. If I were to make something on my channel, what would that be? So the first thing I did was, you know what, let me just make an intro video. I'm going to try and see if I could tell my story in 1 minute. And that was a fun assignment for me. It was a really, really fun assignment because I did that for several reasons. One, I was kind of tired of introducing myself to people, right? It's like, oh, I got to write this long email. Yeah. So it's like the purpose, this is like a video calling card. I'm just going to send this out when somebody wants to learn a little bit more about me and embed this in places where people can learn more about me. So that it served the function. And then two, it's like, you know, I've never really told my story. What would that look like? And I was very inspired at the time because I had just finished Danielle Leslie's course from scratch. And there was a whole section in there about identifying your, I think she calls it a culture ad. But essentially it's like, it's a introspective worksheet and it's assignment where you're reflecting on who you are, where you came from, your skills, your talents, the trials and accomplishments that you've been through and what you're really good at and what you could share with others. So I had this long list of my story that was unedited. It's like, can I turn this into an interesting 1 minute video? So I started working on that. And I think at the end of 2018, early 2019, I released that. And, you know, got a few hundred views. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I was sharing it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and just pushing this out. And after I finished, I was like, okay, what's next? What's next? Because I'm like, I feel good about this. So my second video, I was at home and we were already just kind of in the process of finally like cleaning everything up and just organizing things because everything was a mess here at my place. And one of the places that I wanted to update was my home office because I was already doing a little bit of work from home. And so I wanted to clean up my office, but I didn't really know what to do with it. So naturally I looked for inspiration, just like I do with any design project. So my goal is to make a nice workspace for myself. So what's out there? So I started researching on Pinterest and things like that, and then went to YouTube and then found a few people who either built their own or they have certain cool setups. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. I like this. I hate these. Don't like this. And then eventually, I was like, you know what? There's not much competition here. There's not many videos on this. And I feel like I could do a pretty good job of showing this process because I personally enjoy watching these things. I love watching DIY videos because I feel like all these little gems that are dropped in throughout where it's like, oh, I didn't know you can combine these two things or build something this way, or that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Like all these things click in my head when I watch these process DIY videos. So I watched a bunch of them, and then I thought to myself, you know what, I could probably do something like this too. Why not? I'm having fun anyway. So I was documenting for maybe 2 months of this process of me updating my office, cleaning it up, what I was hoping to accomplish, how I did that, all the steps I took, and then all the items I chose to put in here. And then I edited that video and I put it out there. And then that thing just blew up. It was insane. I think by the third month, it might have already had a few 100,000 views or maybe even 1 million views. I don't know. It was something crazy. I can't even keep track of the timeline anymore, but it was just this video that it had all this experience that I've been working on for the many, many years that I've been working as a creative. And it just was in the right niche where there wasn't a lot of players, where there wasn't a lot of competition. So my video just accelerated and blew up. And that was the big start for me to realize, shoot, there's more here. There's more here. I did not expect this. Like you said, I was doing all this fancy commercial work and it's like, I didn't see myself doing this. So I was like thinking to myself, is this a fluke? Is this a fluke? It's not a fluke if I can repeat this. So then I made 2, 3, 4 more videos, similar niche. And I tried to explore other types of videos as well. And they all did well. In the first year, I was able to make 3 videos that all cracked 1 million views. So I was like, this is not a fluke. There's something here. So that's how I got started. That's how I realized there's something here that I'm, one, interested and passionate about, but also there's some people that are receptive to that and could actually open up opportunities for me.
No, that's a good way to look at it is, you strike gold and it's like, before you put everything in it, you want to make sure let's make sure there's more gold here. That's a vein and not just a random sprinkling. I think something you said in there really stuck out to me, but I think you kind of just dropped it and moved on. But you spent 2 months working on not just the video, but documenting, you said, and putting it all together. And it's funny because, you look at the video and it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes long or whatever. And it doesn't seem like it took 2 months to do. So within those 2 months, what are you doing? Like why 2 months and what's happening there? Because I think for a lot of people like me, I get really impatient and I want to make a video. And it's like, if I can't get it done in a weekend, it's like, it's worthless. I should just give up on this.
Well, because everything was on the weekend. So even though it was a 2-month period, it's like Saturday, Sunday, and where I will do a little project. And it's just, if you take the big project of redesigning a space, then all of those become micro tasks. So it's like, okay, this weekend I'm going to paint my office. Next weekend I'm going to build my desk. Third weekend I'm going to put up some shelves. Fourth weekend I'm going to, start putting up all the little things that I want in it. And then maybe the last few weekends I'm just editing the video. So that's the realistic timeline. It wasn't necessarily 2 months of just working 8 hours every single day on this thing. It was just, these are the fleeting moments, the extra moments that I have to work on this. So that's why it took so long. And I'm in no rush because my motivation for this was just to share the story of this process. Nothing else. It's like, I just have this hunch that it could be fun. And regardless of how many views it got or not, I was just enjoying the process.
Yeah, I think that's been, because I feel kind of similar to you. I think a lot of people probably are feeling similar to you, which is I feel a little burnt out. I feel like I want to just take a good long time and reset. And I think, you also hit some sweet spots, which was, before the pandemic, obviously a lot of people were moving towards working from home. I was working from home. And that just accelerated that. And then you were looking around, it's like, oh, how do I clean up my office? Right. So I think it's a really great spot to be in, obviously for you. And for me, it's like, yeah, I get this. I get feeling like maybe it would be nice just to make some relaxing videos for myself after making all these 3D animations and stuff like this all the time. So that's really, have you always had the passion for plants and for home and, improvement and all this stuff? Or is this something that you discovered more recently? You just recently did one where you kind of built all these shelving units. And that's something I love doing on my spare time. Is anytime I have a little work shed and I have a few tools, and anytime I get a chance to use them, it's like, I have a heyday, and I'm just like in heaven for an hour or 2 or 3 hours or whatever it is.
A lot of the things that I've been showcasing on my channel are personal passions of mine, and some of them are fairly recent. Like, I only started learning about woodworking last year, and the first thing that me and my wife Belinda built was this whole desk shelving setup, like a floating credenza, floating desk, floating shelves. And that was so ambitious. We should have started by just learning how to build a proper box, but we didn't. Like, we didn't go that route. We just had this crazy idea and this thought that, sure, we can do it. Why not? Like, what's so hard about that? It was so ignorant. But we did it. And that was such a fun project. And ever since that project, I've been figuring out, like, well, what else can I build? It's like, I don't have to buy something off the shelf. What can I build if I just have some raw materials?
Yeah.
And what are the things I need to know?
It's a good feeling, man. It's such a good feeling when you don't have to rely on. It's been something I've been pushing for a little bit. I want to see it happen with everything. And I'm trying to focus on it with fashion and stuff, where it's like, why are we all buying other people's ideas and stuff and brands? Like, I can make my whole brand. It's not that hard right now. Like, I can make a custom tee, and I can make, and you can get them good. I'm not wearing the future one right now, but I have like the Master Debater shirt, and it's it's comfortable and it's a good print. And I'm like, why is anyone? I'm just gonna make my own clothes. I'm gonna make my own everything. Like, it's all gonna be custom. And I love that with the furniture. It's a good feeling when you're like, this is my furniture. I built this, and I didn't have to. I know no poor kid somewhere was slaving away working this, and I can feel good about it. I guess other than the lumber shortage right now, it usually costs less besides your time, which you can argue. But if you're getting value out of it, it's fantastic. I think it's a really cool thing that I hope more people do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what I've been putting on my channel is just turning the camera on myself, right? Like, there's all the stuff that I've done at Blind and then at the Future, and those were all for very specific goals, specific clients. For me, it's like, well, who's the man behind the creations? Who's the person behind the camera? And what does that life look like? And would other people find that interesting, right? Those are all the questions that I had. And those are some of the more recent videos that I've been producing on my channel. It's like, sure, I struck a nerve in this particular niche of desk setups because it's very popular at the time. But what else can I do? In every video that I make, I'm trying to stretch my niche a little bit further just to see where it bends and breaks. So for instance, the last video I produced on my channel was all about houseplants. And I've just recently become so obsessed with houseplants. We became plant parents maybe a little over 2 years ago. I killed half of them when we first got them, and then eventually we just got better. I learned a lot more, and then slowly the collection had built up, especially in quarantine and during the pandemics. It's like, I want to make this place super cozy, and part of that was with plants. I'm like, plants is a very far stretch from like the home improvement stuff that I'm doing, from some of the tech stuff that I did before, and pretty far from creativity. But I'm going to test this out because same thing that I thought about before. It's like, well, here's a space where there's a lot of people, not a lot, I mean, some people who are making plant content that I'm just devouring because I want to learn. I want to learn how to take care of plants. What are the ones that are interesting to get? How should I take care of them? What's right for my environment? Like, all these questions. I'm just very curious, and I'm searching for the answer. And I'm consuming all of this content, and I realize maybe there's 2 or 3 content creators that I like, and then not much else. Everything else is kind of like, it's okay information, or the production quality is not great. So there's an idea. It's like, can I share my passion about my recent plant obsession, and can I make content around that looks different than what's already out there? And can I penetrate and make a dent in this niche? So I made a video, and luckily I found a sponsor, Bloomscape, which makes plants. So it's perfect. They sell plants. So I made this video, and then first day, I think it only had 6,000 views, which normally my videos get like 11,000, 13,000 views on the first day. It's like, oh, And then second day rolled around, 10,000 views. I was like, oh, this is not great compared to, because YouTube tells you like, here's your average, and then here's your current video, and it was like below the graph. I was like, ooh.
It's so like, it's good. The data's useful, but man, even I'm getting like 100 views, right? And then it's like this one got like 200, and then like every time I release a video, it's like this one's performing 50 times worse than your. I'm like, oh gosh, that feels bad.
Right. Yeah. So then that started happening, and then the slump started going down where the average graph was going higher. It's like, the gap is getting bigger, and I'm like, I don't know. I think the algorithm and the audience is still trying to be figured out. So that's my hunch. But it didn't help that there was 1 or 2 people who commented, they're like, oh, so when are you gonna get back to your normal content? Or it's like, or one person said, like, see, Matthew, this is why you shouldn't make content like this, because you can tell it's not popular with your audience. Like, they just straight up tell me that.
Wow, damn.
But it's okay. It's like, you know what? This is coming from a place of truth. This is like, I'm just trying to take it objectively. It's like, well, what is it that you're expecting from my channel? What else do you want to see? But I told that person, you know what? I don't think it's a failure yet. It's a test, and I'm going to give it time. So then a few days went by, and then all of a sudden it jumped up to like 10,000 views per day. And then it just kept accelerating, and then it kind of died down a little bit. And now looking the past 3 days, it's like, it's picked up again. So now this video, which was kind of struggling around less than 30,000 views in the first week or so, now it cracked 100,000 views already. So it's just climbing even more.
Right.
So it just took a while for the audience and the algorithm, I think, to kind of figure itself out, because it's not the normal content that I normally put on my channel.
Here's a weird factor for you to think about. It could be because spring rolls around slower in other places, right? So you had spring early in California, and so it's like, it's springtime, everyone's buying plants, but like, and for me, it's like the same time as you, but then the rest of the Midwest is still under ice, and like just now Texas and places have been enjoying spring, and so as that rolls up, your audience is probably just growing each month as everyone's like, oh, now it's spring for us, and so I think that that's another factor potentially hiding.
Could definitely be a factor. It could definitely be a factor. But one thing that I found very interesting about that recent video is that normally my audience is pretty lopsided. Yeah, most of my like tech related content, my desk stuff is like 95% male and then 5% female. And then this stuff I built for Belinda, like the artist workspace, like that was more balanced. Maybe it was like 80-20 or 75-35 or 25. And so this latest video, it's completely flipped. It's like 80% women and then 20% men. I'm like, I knew it. Like there's things here. It's like I'm planning for a particular audience. I'm testing, and I've always wanted to balance that out, because I hate seeing that where content is so lopsided. It's like I feel like I could speak to both sides. But let me just try. Let me see what I can do. And so these are all experiments that I'm always have a hypothesis and curiosity about, and then see if I could deliver on that through testing of content.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's really, because, and in my own like anecdotal evidence, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like my wife was trying to get into plants for a while, but she has like a black thumb and complains that she kills everything she touches. It doesn't help that we live in like the hottest state ever, and things just die if you leave them outside. But but at the same time, I was like showing her your video, and she was like, Matthew needs to like grant me his magical plant life. But we do have a snake plant, and it's still alive, so those ones are hardy, which is nice. It's hard to kill a snake plant. Yeah. So we still have, and then we have a couple of desert stuff that's doing okay, but like succulents and stuff are where we're like having to live in that zone of things that don't take much water and can be left alone. So we also have 2 cats, so it's like, okay, what can they not eat, and are they not gonna tear to pieces? I kind of would like to dive into a little bit on the demographic side. It's always been interesting to me because YouTube in general, just period, leans masculine, right? It leans, kind of, male dominated. And then you have certain niches, right, that seem to like really be able to cross over. And you were talking about how you think you can speak to both. it's kind of interesting because I, anecdotally would have expected you to have more of a female audience, just period, like with the home improvement stuff, and not, any sort of stereotypes, but just, when I look at that and it's relaxing and calm, and it's like, it's not like aggressive or anything, but it's interesting hearing that you still had a pretty high male audience. And I mean, I'm one of them, so I can't sit here and be like, I'm obviously contributing. But it's interesting that, you made this one video, you had a theory. Are you going to keep playing with this in the future? Or are you hoping to it's hard, right? Because you don't want to, there's obviously stereotypes and stuff you want to avoid, but at the same time, some of these exist for a reason. And so it's like, how do you look at that, right? It's like, how do you approach that? And is that something that, I'm just curious to see where you're going with that, I guess. And it's an interesting thing to break down.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions and thoughts that are in my mind currently. And one of it was kind of brought up by Greg Gunn a long time ago. So when we were looking at content at the future, I had brought that up because we were looking at statistics of audience and like, oh my gosh, it's like 75% male or 70% male. It's like, how do we balance this out? And then Greg's like, is that a bad thing? It's like the reason why people resonate with certain characters on a channel or a personality on a channel is because they see themselves in that person. So if you're Asian, male, certain, demographic, people that look like you, that act like you, that are culturally similar to you will just gravitate towards you. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a factor that automatically comes into play. You watch the content for people you resonate with, and you won't watch the content of people that you don't really, unless you're just trying to get information and get out. You won't stay for that.
Yeah, whenever someone complains about something that's popular, I always tell them, you're not mad at that thing. You're mad at the people that like that thing, right? Like, people are like, oh, why are they making another Despicable Me film? Like, because people keep watching them. Like, you're not mad at the studio. It's just listening to an audience. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, you just have to be aware of those things, right? Because people like different stuff, and that's okay. And I think I heard this in a Clubhouse room maybe 3 weeks ago, where somebody said, people come for the content and they stay for the personality. Mm-hmm. So somebody might be searching for something, or, it's fed to them, and then they watch it. And if they like the person that's delivering that information, guess what? They're going to watch a second or third video by that creator and eventually subscribe. So for me, what I've been testing out lately is like, okay, I'm popular in this niche. How far can I stretch this? And are the people here for me, or are they just here for the idea, the idea of the content? And that's where I'm trying to test. It's like, how many people are actually here for me, and how many people are here just for the content? And I'm okay with just playing around in both areas. That's a question I have in my mind. So I want to see how many people I can carry over. So for instance, like the desk setup video, it's like, I'm going to make a second and a third video that is similar to that. And of course, those people come along for the ride. So let me make another video that's outside of that. Let me talk about like what's in my bag, right? I feel like it's a similar thing. Some people came along, but not everybody. Then it's like, okay, well, people like, I think generally the idea of how I set up my space and how I think about it. What if I take them on this whole DIY road? Because there's a ton of DIY channels that just build stuff, but aren't necessarily about the aesthetics, they're like, they work in their garage and they have a particular look to that genre, which is fine. And I appreciate that, but nobody is doing it from the lens of like a designer, or like my particular lens. I'm looping in all these things that I'm interested in, but filtering it through my particular lens. Can I make something like that, bring over some of the audience that already like my other content, and bring in a new audience that comes from the DIY space? So I'm trying to see, can I build my audience to be a little bit bigger? Every time I'm trying to make a video, I'm trying to see where is an overlap with another thing that I'm either interested in, or, other content I'm watching, and can I bring some of that audience in? So with the plant thing, again, it's like, this is a very far stretch from the desk stuff, but it's not that far from creating a better home, designing a better home for yourself. Right. So let me see what happens if I make it about plants, because I know it's a lot of females who make this content and who consume this content. Can I bring them over? And so far the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is that there's we're a matter of days away from a coffee video, right? That you know you've made it on YouTube as a creator when there's a coffee video, and I hear it's coming. I know it's one of your passions, and it seems to overlap slightly. I'm sure there's going to be a how I drink my coffee or how I make my coffee video coming soon.
I wouldn't you wouldn't be wrong there if there's something in the queue. It's buried pretty far down in the queue, but it is an idea. It's like
just gotta get those sponsors.
Be fun. That's right. Fellow, hit me up.
Yeah. No, that's great. What type of coffee are you having right now? What are you enjoying?
This is a cold brew that I've brewed for more than 12 hours in a Hyro cold brew machine. It's just a bottle, like super easy. And I think the beans are from Maru Coffee in downtown LA from, I believe, Colombia.
Awesome.
It's delicious. Very delicious. But yeah, it's cold brew right now. Usually what I have in the afternoons. In the morning, I'll drink my hot coffee. In the afternoons, I'll have my cold drink.
I do the same, but usually it's just my morning coffee that I've let sit on my desk. And so it's cold now, but it wasn't intentional. It was hot. And it is a local roastery, and it's just Chemex. I just Chemex everything all the time.
I wish I had a Chemex here at home. I just haven't bought one only because I use an AeroPress. It's so small, the footprint, that it's so easy to put away, where a Chemex is huge and it's beautiful, but I don't necessarily want to keep it out on my counter. So yeah, that's the only thing that's held me back from buying a Chemex and going down that route. But I like the coffee it makes.
Do you and your partner both drink coffee in the morning? Is it just you?
Yeah, both of us.
Okay. I have the mini Chemex, so it's a much smaller footprint, but it only makes 1 cup. So it's not, you'd have to do the whole process twice, and nobody wants to do that.
I see. So, well, in AeroPress, you're only supposed to make 1 coffee out of, but I always make 2 batches out of it. I just double the amount of beans, maybe even a little more, and I let it sit for longer, brew for longer, and then I just kind of stretch out the coffee a little bit with more hot water. So it works out. It tastes good.
Yeah, no, it's like an Americano or something, you know.
Yeah, pretty much same idea.
No, that's great. Yeah, my dad we all joked that we were weaned on coffee. Everyone in my family has been drinking coffee since we were kids, and most of us are pretty tall. So the rumors that it stunts your growth is not true.
I thought that was true for me because I'm not that tall. I'm only like 5'6".
You're like, was it the coffee? No, I'm also not that tall myself, but all my brothers are over 6 foot. So
okay,
yeah. But no, so it's kind of funny. Although they don't drink as much coffee as me, so maybe there is some truth to that. I don't know. I'm
You're shrinking. You were tall.
Yeah,
you were destined to be tall.
No, I mostly blame it on. I lived in India when I turned as I was like 16 to 15 to 16, and I got like 0 protein and like no nutrition at like the peak growth year of my life. And the years before that, like leading up to that year, I was eating nonstop. Like I would have a full like steak at dinner or whatever too, just like typical teenager stuff. And then I went and I learned to sustain myself on like rice and maybe a little bit of fish here and there. And then when I got back, my appetite just wasn't the same. And I'm like, well, I think that probably had an effect on, and like I said, all my brothers are huge. I'm the shortest of them all. So I'm like,
I feel like nutrition has a lot to do with it. I was the same way. My diet at the time in my peak growth period was hot Cheetos and Coke, like that was my diet pretty much.
That's not going to help. Yeah.
It's not going to help.
Some proteins and
no nutrition.
Some stuff to build that bone structure and everything. But no, it's really interesting. You seem really cued in to your audience, and not just the audience as it is now, but your potential audience. And it's interesting because you have this, like the same thing Chris has, which is you have this Zen ability to overlap things in ways that I think most people aren't as good at, or aren't naturally good at, where, it's like, okay, not only can I hit my audience, and it happens to be an audience within a niche that I really care about, but it leverages the skills I've already learned in the past, and from managing another YouTube channel and from being a creative director. But it then also allows me to do what I want to do right now, which is kind of relax and kind of build out my space. And so it's not as the drain it would be. And to me, that's the secret to like be able to have unlimited energy in a weird way. Like I think when you look at someone like Chris or somebody, you're like, how do you do so much? It's like, well, everything they do is feeding into what they want to do. So it kind of becomes this positive feedback loop. And it's been rare in my life that I've been able to create that. It's been one or two times. And when I do that, I'm able to exist in the flow state for longer periods of time and all this stuff. But it's rare. Is it something that's as effortless as it seems, or is it actually a huge effort on your side that you're putting in, all this thought and work to do this, and then it's like, no, I just make it look easy?
It's both. I think there is more ease to it in the sense that I'm already going to do this. I want to do this, so therefore the job is less stressful, and there's less friction that's preventing me from doing it. The part that's difficult is because it's not a regular 9-to-5 job where I have to report in, 9 to 5. It's like I have to hold myself accountable to do the things, because I could easily let the day get away from me, because I love relaxing, especially now. And it's like, I'll play Call of Duty with Ben. We'll play Warzone for a few hours, and it's like, shoot, where did the day go, Ben? You got your work done, but I didn't even get anything done today. So there are still days like that, and that's the challenging part, is just to keep yourself accountable. And I'm figuring that out. So that's the hard part. But the easy part is when I'm actually in the groove, like focused on the work, and I'm going to do this thing today, like I'm so in it. And that is a luxury to have. And I think that comes from something that Chris talks about all the time, which is scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. So scarcity mindset is you're just feeling worried that if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. Or if I take this risk, then all these potential bad things are going to happen, right? You're feeling like there is a limited quantity of something, and that everything feels very risky, and you're going to lose something as a result of taking some kind of action. That's generally the feeling I get when I think about scarcity mindset. And then on the other side, it's abundance mindset, meaning you can do something and it will probably generate some kind of net positive result or impact in your life. It might be a little, it might be a lot, and you don't really worry about it. And you generally feel like if you put effort into something, it's going to net some kind of result. And that's your expectation. So it's generally the expectation of what happens when you take action. So for the longest time, I think I go between those two states, but I've mostly been in that abundance mindset, meaning that if I put my mind to something, I know it's going to net some kind of positive result. My mom told me this when I told her I was going to quit my job at the future. She's like, you know what? I've noticed this about you ever since you were 13 years old, that once you say you're going to put your mind to something, you just do it and it happens. Ever since then. And so I was like, dang, my mom knows me better than I do. And she's seen this over and over since I was a kid. And, she has a mature perspective on this. So it's like, shoot, that has been how I've operated a lot of my life. But there has still been drawbacks where, like 2007, I started a business with my college mates, and we ended up closing that business in 2009. So from that point on, it's like I always wanted to work for somebody else, because I always felt like I couldn't run my own business. I couldn't do my own thing. And that was a limiting belief, and that kind of generated some scarcity mindset issues. And, I went through a long time being very happy being the person behind the camera, behind the scenes, working behind somebody like Chris, because I could help them do that, and I could never be in the lead of that. And it wasn't until I started observing that limiting belief back in 2018, I believe, we started the business boot camp, and Chris had an assignment there about limiting beliefs, and he put me on the spot, and that just came out. It's like, well, one limiting belief is I can't do it on my own. And he's like, well, where's that coming from? And I was like, my younger self from 10 years ago when I had to close my business. It's like, shoot. So that failure left a really big scar on me, and it kind of stuck with me for a long time. And I think that limiting belief made me feel like I have a little bit of a scarcity mindset. Like I can't get anything outside of just working for a good company. And everything that I want is going to be the net result of doing good in one company. But over time, like that, obviously I started seeing possibilities. And I think seeing possibilities of opportunity is where you start to grow your abundance mindset. So you were sharing earlier that you like to point to people who have done something that's outside of the norm, or just outside of working for somebody else. And I think that because I saw Chris go from running a client service agency to creating content and being his full self, I was like, that's one good example. And making money off of that, turning that into a business, growing that into something that's impactful. And then once I got into the YouTube space, I started looking at other creators like Olir, his name's Ultralinks on YouTube. There's Ali Abdal, and Shelby Church, a bunch, Justin Say, like all these people that I've watched their content. They started really young. They didn't really know what they're doing. And then eventually now they have several businesses, they own several properties, and they're getting all this income from different places. I think it was one video maybe a year ago that Ali Abdal had shared, and he said, okay, I've been a junior doctor and I've been sharing my experience on YouTube. But being a junior doctor, I get $33,000 a year. Like that's my salary as a junior doctor. You know how much I made on YouTube and everything else? $1.1 million. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So like that, I think little things like that helped unlock possibilities in my mind to see opportunity where I didn't see it before. Because I always felt like, oh, you know, this is reserved for the ultra popular people of the world, the Mr. Beast and all these people who just, they know what they want and what they want to do. But once I saw other examples and people kind of talking through their experiences, where they're getting income, how they got to there, and like realistically breaking it down, all of a sudden it made it possible in my mind. And I'm like, oh, I can do this. I feel confident in doing this.
Yeah, because so I think one of the reasons that it's really important to have that visibility of other people being successful is like you can only work with the data you have, right? So in all the whatever the data you have, that is like your reality essentially. And so getting more data, this is why kind of self-improvement and learning, and you'll hear everyone that's, you know, successful be like, read. You're increasing the amount of data you have to work with to be like, okay, what are the options? Like if you don't know something exists, if you don't know a color exists, you can't use it in your artwork, right? So it's like, well, let's look at this color spectrum and find more colors I can use. And the same thing when it comes to, I think, business. And it's funny because creatives are really, really good at expanding their mind creatively and studying, you know, like I said, all the colors and all these forms and you know, watching, you know, everything from like crazy animes to, you know, random small like channels over here and like an art book they found someplace. And, you know, I have art books all behind me that I love and statues, but it's like when it comes to thinking about, you know, making money, it just becomes this like black box. And it's like, well, I look, there's 5 companies I know exist: Blizzard, ILM, Weta, and, you know, Buck or, you know, whatever. And it's like, I'm going to go work for one of those 5 companies. You know what I mean? And it's just like, golly, guys, like expand your horizons a little bit. And we're at a point now where, you know, Chris has told the story of a ex-student of his that, you know, made dice, and those dice, you know, went on to sell on Instagram ads and on Kickstarter for like $1 million, right? Like, and it's like, so you can make dice and make money, guys. Like you can do something else. Like you just need to learn, you know, a little bit more. And I'm trying to challenge myself doing that because, you know, I've been doing client work for so long, and it's a paradigm shift where I've been like, you know what, maybe in the future, client work isn't going to be where it's at. Like maybe that's an old structure that I should kind of leave at this point, and the writing's on the wall maybe on that one, you know. And you and Chris have mentioned how, you know, you watched his advertising budgets got smaller and smaller and smaller. And, you know, what that says is, well, you know, smaller and smaller studios are going to be the only ones that are going to be able to make money. So let's not make a giant studio. Let's keep the overhead low. Let's make a small studio. And then let's find out where some alternative spaces are. Right now, what's really interesting to me is sort of the short film world. And I've been studying all these like Unreal Engine channels have been showing up, and they just make short films with like 2 people. And most of them are like Star Wars, right? Or Halo or something. But I think there's a lot more potential that's kind of untapped there, right? And so that's where I've been kind of looking like, okay, what would a business model centered around this look like? And it's going to be exciting, I hope, and really fun. And then making that transition, like stepping away from client work into that has been the trickiest part of the whole thing. But it's really exciting to see, you know, your success and to see that, because that's like another data point for me, right? It's like, okay, well, Matthew can do this, and he's somebody that's taken this and he's found a whole new, you know, little genre for himself of kind of, you know, chill home improvement, you know, / like you know, like creating your world around yourself to be the most enjoyable it can be, right? And aligned with who you are as a person. And like that, if that's super cool. And I, you know, if he can do that, then surely I can do something around this other idea, you know? it's still more explosions based and giant robots and stuff, but yeah, but it'll be fun to do. Yeah, there's just it's interesting. I think when you look at where we're at now and all the options we have, and like you said, opening up your horizons, seeing Chris and other people be successful, what is most exciting to you about the future and about, not just your own where you're at now, but like just potential that you see out there? What's something that you're like, oh, I'm so excited, I can't wait for X, Y, or Z to happen, or this technology develop, or for me to build this new project? What's exciting you the most right now?
I think the most exciting thing for me right now is just realizing where I can apply my creativity to. And like you said, the opportunities that it can generate. So recently, I spoke to 2 different companies about the opportunity of making physical products with them. And I am not an industrial designer by any means, but I had because I've been doing all this DIY stuff over the past year or so, and it's just like, I think like a designer, like there's a problem, there's a hypothesis, there's parameters I need to work in, and a goal I need to accomplish. I've been talking to these 2 companies about it, and it's all of a sudden I'm able to connect all these dots where it's like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if there was this product for this audience? Right? Like, and I try and open that possibility up. And I feel like the market, there's not a lot of products that are just like this. And one way that we could market it is XYZ. And I'm just bringing in all of my branding, marketing experience, all the commercial experience, and the things that we did at the future. It's like, then we could leverage the things that I'm doing on my channel. And so I'm building up this giant dream, which are clear to my mind. It's like, dude, actually, I can make this happen. This is real. And if they don't bite down on it, this is something that I actually can produce myself if I wanted to. So these are things like physical products that I never thought I could make before because of my lack of training or background. Now it just seems like a reality, and it's just 2 phone calls away for it to actually happen. And like, again, like it was Karen Huang who did the Dispel dice. She's figured out how to fabricate the stuff herself, and eventually she's moved up and building it in factories now. So all of those things, it's like, you just have to get your hands wet. You just got to learn, and then you can make it because other people have already done it. So that's the thing that's most exciting for me right now, because although everything else is super exciting in terms of running the channel, getting new opportunities and sponsorships there, the idea of designing something physical, something new that I haven't done before, excites me. So we'll see where that goes. There's nothing official yet, but that's definitely it's juicy in my mind right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a wild guess. I think it's going to be a plant pack. So it's a backpack for plants. So you can take your plant with you, so you don't have to leave your comfort of if you ever have to leave your plants from home, you can bring them with you. And you always have your plant
constantly
pal.
Watered.
Yeah.
And there's a water reserve for you and for
exactly. I had an idea for that because it's hot out here and we do a lot of hiking, and my favorite thing in the world is misters. So when you're on a patio and there's all the misters, I was like, what if someone took a Camelback, which is a backpack with a water in it, and you have a little hose, and I was like, and you had a mister on it, and you just walk and you'd be your own personal mister everywhere you went. And I was like, oh, you got to have some sort of pump. You got to have a power pack and power and water and on your back and liability.
I think they have something similar. I don't know if it has the misting feature or not, but it's like around the neck. So you know how they make the speakers around the neck? They make the massagers around the neck. Now they have ones that's
it's like air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
Sony did one. It's like a little cube. It's like you can put it under your shirt. Yeah, those are interesting. But yeah, I was thinking like, man, it'd be great to have a little mister everywhere I went. But so that's a free idea. You can take the plant pack. I think it matches your brand better than mine.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we've been looking at getting a pouch for our cats. One of them, there's a cat, and she just sits up here like a parrot. She'll just sit on my shoulder and my wife's shoulder, and it's very cute. But she has her little claws in us, and I'm like, that's just not good. So I'm like, we need to get some sort of a sling and carry the cat around in it. No, that's dude. I'm so excited. I hope that you're able to pull off, making your own products. And like I said, I think that's like, we're almost there. Like we're pretty much there, I think, where everyone can make whatever it is they want themselves. It's like, if you want a product, if you want, like, you can become your own, t-shirt supplier and for your own brands. And if you want a weird or you have a movement that you care about, or you have, some small industry you're into, like you can do it. Like one of the things that triggered it for me is, it was a client of ours and they just sent me like a ton of free merch. And I was like, this is all really good stuff. It all looks fantastic. And I was like, they just made it themselves. Like, why don't I make it myself and like just have my own stuff and just put the effort into to actually make it look good, So it's just something that's I'm really excited about too. And more power to you on getting those products out there. I think it's going to be exciting. And I'll keep an eye out to like, which video is it? And, that's the one. So that's great.
I'll announce it if something comes to fruition, but it's still super early, and I'm just. But because the seed is planted, like I have all these like Notion boards where I'm like building out the idea, like the pitch essentially, like what is the vision, so that if somebody asks, like if this one person is not right for it, who can I show this to and be like, dude, look, it's ready. Let's just make this. This is the vision.
Yeah, and at the very worst, it's like you can take it and crowdfund it, or do whatever you want with it. We live in a really great time of opportunities, and I think it's really, really exciting to just to see, like, it's like that's what I want. I just want more people doing their own thing, everyone becoming essentially a free agent, and realizing that they are, they're their own entity, right? It's like you don't need a company, you don't even need a clothing brand, you don't need any of these people. Like you can do it all yourself, and then every interaction you have is voluntary. If you want to go work with somebody, then it's because you actually want to do it, not because, well, if I don't, then I can't eat, then I can't work, you know what I mean? And I think it's really, really cool to see that happening more and more and faster. I think it's a big positive note for me in the world.
Yeah, and I think one thing to note too that people are starting to realize, but I think needs to be said more, is that you don't have to be a superstar. You don't have to build $100 million company. You don't need to build 1,000-person company in order to be successful. You can build something that's generating, $20,000 of extra revenue for you a year, and that's fantastic.
Yes.
Like imagine, and then what if you have 5 of those things that all line up with different interests or passions in your life? Mm-hmm. Guess what? It's like now you have a more sustainable life, because if one of those things disappear, you still have the other ones to support, and you can start building that up. And that's one thing that I've been very fortunate about, that it's like my income before was just coming from a single job. I report in, but as soon as I stop working, I stop making money. Mm-hmm. But now I have all these other interests, different revenue streams that are helping generate income for me. And it's like, if one dies, then, it's not the end of the world. And I think that's something that's important to say out there. It's like, diversify your income streams, but then also it's okay to have small little projects here and there, because they all add up.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I was just on a podcast about sustainability, and my sustainability belief is in business. And I think that's the only way to have, I think long-term sustainability as a culture is like, you can't have these pseudo monopolies essentially just running everything. As soon as anything, they make one bad decision and that affects millions of people. Whereas my little company, I can make a couple bad decisions and it's like the fallout's just a few people, right? And then same thing with the good decisions, like, well, then all the wealth ends up in this one spot, right? So having it all diversified is wonderful. There's somebody I follow, and I really like this quote from them. And they were like, if you go to a bookstore, everyone likes to look and see, all the big top sellers or whatever, but there's all these books in here that you're like, what is this little crappy book? Like, who made that? Like, and you would never buy it, but there's somebody buying it. And it's like, that could be you. Like, you don't have to be the most successful author ever. You don't have to be the most successful business ever. You can have your own little stake, your own little claim, your small piece of, the world that's yours. And that's good, and that's, you can live off of that and have a really good life. And in some ways, I think it's more enjoyable because you don't have the stress of a million people, on you, right? You don't have that responsibility. And I don't think that drive is meant for most people. I'm not one of these people. I don't love telling other people what to do. And I don't have I don't want to change the world, with my vision. And I'm not, and I'm not critiquing Chris at all, because I know he has a big vision. But there's a lot of problems that come from companies that want to like change the world, right? You have Coke and it's like refresh the world. It's like, is that what you're doing? I don't know, So, it's like, I'd rather everyone just kind of do their own small thing and see what happens. And you can be that pub on the corner that's been around for, 4 generations. Like, that's a fantastic thing to create. And you've improved, unnumberable lives by doing that, you know, even if it's just a place for people to meet after a soccer match.
Yeah.
And that's a need. That's a wonderful thing. And so I 100% agree. Like, you know, and then like you were talking about, you have these tripod legs, and it's like, get as many legs as you can on your tripod, right? There's probably a good balance is, you know, 5 to 6 or so, you know, but I think it's like 7. The average millionaire has like 7 streams of income or something like that. But, you know, versus having one thick tripod leg that you're just hoping is going to never topple over. It's like, I get a few of them that'll help out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have the support because it gives you confidence. It gives you the confidence to go into that abundance mindset. And you're like, you know what? If I fail, I still have all these other things, right? It doesn't feel like it's a risk where you are in scarcity mindset a lot.
And you have a lot more ability to experiment. You know, if you have, you know, 2 or 3 different things going on, it's like, let me try this one out. And it's like, oh, that didn't work. I don't have this huge sunk cost fallacy of needing to hold on to it for so long. Cause it's like, it's just one little idea for a short amount of time, you know, versus having, you know, it being like, oh, if I want to do something new, I have to leave my entire career, start a whole new career and hope that works. And like, that's a lot more risky. And I think you have a lot more room for experimentation if you have it spread out a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's super important. And having said that, I do want to caveat the thing that I just said is, you know, it's okay to have multiple interests, but I think you should still explore each lane and go in depth as far as you can for a good sustained amount of time. There's something to be said about consistency. So I'm not encouraging everybody to try 20 things and then hopefully one of those things is going to become something that's income driven or like bring them so much joy. It's like, no, you have lots of things to explore. Do one at a time. Keep doing your main thing, right? Like, because whatever's supporting your life right now, don't ditch that. Like, keep working that job and then do the other stuff on the side. But pick one at a time, go deep, go far. And then when you've truly exhausted that, it's like, you know what? Let's try something else.
Right.
Not just like, let me do another weekend project and let me try something else the next weekend and something else. You know, like that's okay for exploring for a little bit. But if you really want to turn it into something more, you do have to go in depth on something and go farther than everybody else that's only scratched the surface. Because there's a lot of surface scratchers, people who don't want to go beyond the Google search.
No, for sure. And it's, that's another thing that's hard for artists, I think, is you get a lot of people that, and I'm one of these, that just really likes to taste everything. And I really like the spice of life and variety and, you know, sticking with something for a sustained amount of time is essential. And like you said, making that trade-off where, you know, I think you have a good model where you were still working at the future. You tested some stuff out. You waited to see, oh, is it working? Is it successful? Do I have an audience here? And then once that pretty much met, you know, your income that you're already making, it's like, okay, I can, this step is really painless, right? It's just, it's a sideways step. I'm not taking a step backward or a step down. You know, it's just a horizontal thing I'm doing. My lifestyle doesn't have to change. I don't have to move to a crazy new place. It's, you know, you want to be, sometimes you want to disrupt everything at once, but I think a lot of times it's more palatable and more ideal to disrupt 1 or 2 parts of your life, you know, with all the safety nets that you had. Like same thing, you know, I didn't choose to leave when I left. Choosing to not pursue something else was because I had plenty of income saved up for, you know, for pretty much the rest of the year. I was in a place where I'd already had built relationships with many clients. I'd been running the business for 3 years as, you know, a side parallel thing. And so when it came to, okay, well, I'm just going to double down on this, it was much, much less painful than I think you get this like weird dam buildup with a lot of people where they convince themselves so they can't do something, they can't do something, they can't do something, they can't do something. And so they never try. And then when they finally try, it's like, I'm going to give it everything I got. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do it all. And then like that lasts for about 2 weeks and they're like, oh, what have I done? Like, you know, and you know, you see this with a lot of things with you know, everything from relationships to obviously work and to travel and stuff. And it's like, no, think it out, like do it a little bit slower, you know, give it some trial and error time. You know, one of the things I was thinking about, you mentioned talent stacking. And I think for the young people out there, I think one of the realities that we need to accept, and it's really hard to do, is you're not going to have the talents to stack. You know, like when you come out and you're like, oh, I'm making, you know, YouTube videos and that stacks with what I did at the future. And I'm creative and I have good eye for design and I have, you know, I know about negotiating, you know, business deals, like all these things you've learned over, you know, 30 some odd years. And if you're young and just starting out, you know, it's like you have like one or two maybe, talents. It's just like, you're going to have to go deep on a few things. And so that's where I think another part of this helping out is, this branching out, is useful because you have a lot of strong, skills to stand on. And if you're someone young, you don't have a lot of those things yet, and you're just going to have to build those up. So go deep on a few things for a while until you're really good at them. And then you can be like, oh, now that I'm really good at this, and that, where do these line up? And what are ways of mixing them and matching them?
Right. Totally.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's been awesome. I think we've talked for a little over an hour here, hour and a half about. So I really appreciate you being willing to come on and just chat and hearing your excitement and your success and some of the really interesting things you're doing with your audiences and wanting to reach out and figure out like, oh, I think I can snag some of that female audience over here. Like, I think I can get some of those plant people over here. And just your humility, when people give you feedback and not getting just instantly hurt and offended by it, but being like, maybe they have a point, but not doubting yourself instantly either, right? And just taking it 100% and being like, oh, this was a mistake. Right. This was stupid. I should never make a video like this again. So I'm really excited to see what you do in the future and how it evolves. And congrats on being able to go out on your own.
Cool. Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting me on and asking these questions and having this discussion, because I think I love having these discussions, and I'm glad I can share with other people the things that I've experienced, because I'm hoping that I could be a good role model and a good possibility that somebody else can see in their own lives, because that's why we do what we do.